encounters with paranormal entities have been reported for decades. What makes these reports interesting is the fact they go beyond just stories, having many people come forward with their encounters, and even struggling to explain what it was they encountered. The most common of these entities is said to be that of ghosts and other paranormal beings. These have been reported for years by various people all across the world. However, equally confusing is the high number of mysterious people cases that have been reported in recent years. It may sound far-fetched, but there are some out there that believe humans have the ability to take on supernatural traits, and sometimes these individuals are referred to as witches. All over the planet you can find cases of witches. In recent years, however, it's known that the majority of these cases were massively overlooked, and the people being accused of these actions were in fact just regular people. The sad truth is many lost their lives over these claims, with some having to move locations in fear of being caught and meeting a similar demise. With that being said, there are some that do believe certain people possess supernatural powers, and that every so often these individuals make themselves known. Back in the early 1990s, there appeared to be strange rumours spreading all across India that spoke of a witch walking through the streets after midnight, speaking in the voice of their target's mother as it would knock on the front door of their target's house in an attempt to get in. The rumours came to be known as that of the Witch of Bangalore, as it was believed to have focused the majority of its time around the area of Bangalore, and was the centre of the majority of its sightings. This led to many people being scared to open the front door to their houses if they heard their mother calling their name, regardless of the time of day. It was not until one genius Indian child came up with a brilliant solution to prevent the witch from targeting anyone else in the future. The child claimed that if people wrote the words nail bar on the front door, a phrase that translates to come back tomorrow, then the witch would be forced to return the next night, only to see the sign again and repeat the cycle. This led to a wide number of people writing the phrase on their front door, leading to the continued urban legend to this day, and the reason why the phrase might appear on the doors of residential zones all throughout Bangalore. Interestingly, another case would begin to make the rounds back in 2006, and it detailed that a group of unknown objects were being seen in Mexico. The Mexican press were one of the first places to report the mysterious event, with several people then coming forward to comment on the matter. Interestingly, these objects that were being seen were being described by some as a UFO, but there was a large majority that said that although the objects were floating, the identity of them was more human-like. These unidentified flying objects were then said to have been witnessed by some locals before the main event happened, and that even then they had no idea what they was looking at. The main footage and images comes from a group called Ovnion Club de Nuevo Leon, which translates to the UFO Club. This club is said to be one of the largest UFO groups in Mexico, and one that over the years has investigated and reported multiple claims. However, these mysterious beings or crafts would be one of the strangest they'd come across. Described as looking like a large humanoid, the objects in the footage could be seen flying close to the nearby mountains. The Witches of Monterrey then started to spread throughout the region, and residents even came forward with alleged encounters with the witches. One of the local residents described their encounter with a strange woman. They said that at the time they were walking home with a friend, then suddenly a woman seemed to have appeared out of nowhere, and asked where they were going. As the girl replied saying they were heading home, the woman just stared blankly at them. Immediately the girl thought to herself that something seemed off about the woman, and so continued her journey. After looking behind, a few seconds later they noticed the woman who they'd just been speaking to had vanished. However, when they got to the end of the street, the strange woman once again came into sight. However, this time she managed to somehow get in front of them. She was seen under a nightlight staring at the girls. At this point they got worried and soon ran home. The girl said she hasn't encountered or seen the woman since, and said she was glad she decided to run the rest of the way home. Another interesting account of these beings comes from that of a police officer. The story goes that a Mexican police officer was on patrol in his car when he encountered a mysterious being. At around 3 in the morning, he turned into a street that was on his normal route. However, on this occasion something wasn't right. In the distance he could see what appeared to be a large black object falling from a tree. Thinking it may have been a resident or someone that needed assistance, he decided it would be best to go and investigate. However, as he started to approach the object, he could see that it hadn't actually hit the ground, and whatever it was somehow hovering around a foot above the ground. As the officer approached the levitating object in his car, it then slowly started to descend. When it touched the floor, the officer shouted to whatever it was to turn around. After getting no response from the individual, he put his 4 beams on. This caused the creature to become wild. It started to cover his face, but at this point the officer was able to give a good description of the individual. He said that it was a woman with pale skin and that possessed 2 large round black eyes. He said that looking into the eyes made him feel nervous, and that he didn't like being around whatever it was. After observing it for around a minute, the entity then leapt onto the hood of the car and started going crazy. The officer noted that whatever it was, it tried really hard to get to him, and that he tried his best to stay away from it. He was also able to describe the clothing of the individual, saying that it was wearing a black cloak and that it reminded him of a witch. At this point he made it a priority to get out of there and call for backup. Interestingly, as he reached the end of the street he started to feel lightheaded, and then before he knew it he lost consciousness. He was discovered by fellow officers and it turned out he wasn't hurt, but his team members noted that he was in a bad way, and that something serious must have happened for him to be put in this situation. When he started to come around, all of his workers were interested as to what happened that night, and as you can imagine he was hesitant about telling people as he thought he would be mocked. When the other officers did eventually hear about what had happened, they were doubtful. The officer in question was then asked to undergo several tests in order to make sure that nothing was in his system. He was happy to do this and all the tests were negative. The next thing he was asked to do is submit himself for a psychiatric evaluation. At this point he felt like no one believed what he had seen, but he knew he had to do this if anyone was going to believe him. Once again though, the test came back fine. The police officer's story then gained further credibility when residents started to come forward with their own encounters, and that on the night of his sightings others reported seeing a strange woman hovering in the area, but as soon as they tried to record the being she managed to vanish. Going back to the witches that were allegedly seen in the sky, although there are some individuals that hold the idea that what was seen that day was in fact a witch, there seems to be an even larger amount of people that suggest that what was seen that day was actually a UFO. One of the most interesting things about the event is that the object in question was seen really low to the ground. This is something that's not usually seen when it comes to an unidentified flying object. A large group of people were able to witness and photograph the encounter. This adds credibility to the event, and that something actually happened on that day. One of the main issues is trying to figure out what the local residents were seeing. Theories have ranged from an unidentified flying object, to military technology, a witch, and even a hoax. Interestingly, some researchers who were able to sit down and view the footage and images said it was interesting. One of the things they picked up on is how the objects reacted to the wind. They suggested that if this was edited it would have been a lot more smooth, whereas these objects seem to have moved with the wind, something you would expect to see if it was actually there. As with these types of sightings though, not everyone is entirely won over. In fact, some have offered some other ideas as to what the objects could be. One person suggested the objects weren't witches and were in fact balloons. The video was a prank, with balloons being tied to a plastic bag and then released. When the wind picked up the objects it gave the effect that it was a UFO. However, many have said if this was the case there's not enough balloons tied to the bag to cause this effect, and balloons in wind are much more erratic. Eyewitnesses said that whatever it was moving smoothly across the skyline. So my question to you guys is, what do you make of the witches seen above Mexico? And what do you think the police officer encountered at 3 in the morning? Be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comment section below, and help us by growing this community while working to solve these unexplained mysteries. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.